Let me do a quick introduction of myself here. First of all, I'm glad to be here to help moderate and host today's event. I'm the former CISO over at General Motors, was at General Motors, and every time I say this, it's going to show my age, but over 28 years. But with that said, I will also tell you that I retired in my 40s. So, uh, yes, I actually started there when I was 18 years old and went from cable guy to CISO, and that's a fantastic story that I could tell someone over drinks. So it is possible. Then from there, I went to Harman Kardon. You might be familiar with JBL speakers and the Harman infotainment systems in your automobiles. Was their global CISO for another 7, 8 years, and then was one of 5 CISOs over at Samsung. So great to be here. Today, we're going to be talking about AI under attack and how to secure what you can't see. This event and virtual lunch and learn is sponsored by Dymium. And so we're going to have a roundtable discussion for 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to introduce our technology provider and founder and CEO of Dymium, Denzil, to continue the conversation and to share with us what Dymium is doing in this space. Also, by the way, if you hadn't heard, we've got some really nice executive gifts. I think we've got a half dozen of these. So we're going to be choosing some people wisely at the end of the event. So stick around to the end. The agenda, fairly simple. We've done our early check-in already and welcoming of attendees. As I mentioned, we're going to have a roundtable discussion concerning AI under attack and how to secure what you can't see. And then at the bottom of the hour, we are going to introduce our sponsor to continue that conversation from Dymium. And then, as I mentioned, stick around to the end because we've got some great giveaways. If you enjoy these weekly, bi-weekly executive lunch and learn events, feel free to come back. Check out the newly designed CxO InSyte website. We'd love to have you attend another session in the future. So real quickly, let's talk about what's happening in the news, because, when we have these events and we choose one of these topics, there's one thing of discussing it, but it's a whole nother when you're seeing and hearing, various articles in the news on the web, which really highlights the importance of what we're talking about. So one of the articles, CISO series, Wessels security breach, third-party AI tool exposed internal systems. I don't know what that third-party AI tool was, but I would say that would be a great article to read, find out what they're using, and having some tools around those AI agents are going to be really important. And in this case, you can see those agents actually exposed a whole lot of internal data. The article underneath that, nearly 80% of enterprises say AI is held back by data access challenges. So what we're finding there is, AI, it's being deployed everywhere, but yet there's still this segment of organizations that they're just not ready to put it in because, there are some challenges, and they're finding out that if they just implement it without security, without compliance, they're going to end up like Wessels and the security breach that took place there. So again, great article concerning those challenges of implementing AI. Then under solutions review, governing AI at scale requires unified data control for trust. Bloomberg Data Privacy Court highlights compliance queries in the age of AI. And then last but not least, the Wall Street Journal, workers sue 10 billion AI startup for collecting and exposing personal data. So you definitely don't want to be in that situation. So again, when we're using these agents, using these tools, what they're accessing, how they're accessing, who's accessing it is of vital importance. So with that said, and this is where you guys come off mute, I want to start the discussion hopefully with a fairly simple question here, but with the rapid AI innovation and yet, some of the conflicts that we see with compliance and audit requirements, how do you balance? How do you balance the need for rapid AI innovation, but yet you still have your obligations around data compliance and auditability? So we've got some hands up already, and let me just see here. Why don't we just start off with Michael? Michael.
Okay, what I've seen with the AI that I've worked with is you've got to have a human in the process. It's an artificial intelligence. Let's take it for its name. It is not a native intelligence. It is not conscious of things. We saw the thing in the news the other day where Claude went with a business and deleted their customer
I saw that.
database
Saw that.
within moments of it being brought online. You need to have a human being to say, no, no, this is the wrong thing. If you think even to when the Pentagon was looking at using Claude, and they came out with numbers, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but the number something like 1 in 5 scenarios, the AI decided that it was preferable to use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And so you need to make sure that there is someone who is there to say, no, you know,
Yep.
and and again, I don't want to do this overly long, but as I mentioned before, I'm looking for a job, and they're
Yep.
using AIs to review resumes, and the AIs might be looking for keywords, but if you're describing a process, they do not have an understanding of that process.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, once again, there needs to be a
Yeah.
human in the process.
No, great comment, Mike. I'm going to choose a couple folks who I haven't chosen recently. Let's go with Mahesh.
Yeah, so the biggest factor to understanding the AI inception in any organization is going to be understanding the use cases, right? So you're going to have an interns coming in saying, "I need an access to cloud," and you're going to have an the design center chief engineer asking for the same. So they don't carry the same level of in standardized environment. They don't carry the same level of risk. Intern basically could do limited stuff, but chief technology officer could do a big damage. So understanding the use case and basically building the custom policies around those use cases is going to be more effective than giving a blanket approval saying, yeah, you can use this or you cannot use this.
Right.
And in today's scenario, you cannot say you cannot use AI. You have to take a risk, bubble up the risk to the management, to the board. Yeah, if you do this, this is the risk we are signing up. And the bigger topic, the bigger point here is going to be some of the insurance companies are looking at this with the closer lens. So you got to keep eye on that because they are trying to figure it out. How can we exclude the risk, AI action risk from our policies? So it's going to be a multi-factor thought process before we can say yes or no or adopt the technology.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mahesh. Nate, again, when it comes to obligations for data compliance and auditability, are you able, Nate, to implement that when you've got, this rapid AI deployment being required?
So we've really run headfirst into AI. What we
Okay.
found is, and Mahesh hit the nail on the head. First, you have to start with a business case. Otherwise, cost overrun is one of the biggest killers. We're testing Claude, we've got Copilot rolled out. We're looking at Cursor. We're looking at a Vibe Code pipeline, which Michael, good timing. We posted that article. That's a little scary on what happened to Pocket OS. But the biggest issue we still have is the guardrails around data, like the
Mhm.
concerns of, yes, you can use this for X, but users are always going to intentionally or sometimes they don't even think about it and they upload a contract, they upload client confidential data. So what we found so far is with Copilot that we set up a workspace. We
Okay.
still have the options for the users to use the outside, use the web and everything. But it's really hard without putting all those guardrails in place that really limits the users, which then leads to shadow AI.
Yeah.
to ensure that we have the proper controls in place. Right now, it's mainly administrative. I mean,
It's
that's
hard
where
to
we're at.
control. It's hard to control the beast of AI though, because
Mhm.
every day there's something new getting put into service, and every day a new malicious solution is being provided for free, right? So it also comes down to policies and well-defined policies and well-communicated policies. You cannot expect to constrain and restrain all of it unless you
Yeah.
handcuff your teams and don't let them do anything. And
Right.
and even cost overrun is hard to avoid. It's almost it just luckily with Claude you can set caps on spend, but it's incredible how quickly those costs
Mhm.
go up. It's astounding. So
Yeah.
Users don't understand the time and the token and how
no,
it's being
nobody
used.
understands it. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that, Chris. I know we have
Mo,
Crane.
do you mind
You
if I
have your
ask?
hand up,
Do you
Chris.
mind if I ask a question, Mo, on that one? I'm just kind of curious if you guys have ended up at a rough number of what it takes dollar-wise to feed one of your developers that's using those tools. Have you guys got to that kind of point yet?
No,
Okay.
We haven't either.
no, no.
Not yet, huh?
No, we've hit a relatively mid-range, and we're not a big shop, but we are fully embracing AI with regular, frequent communication about using your head and understanding the policies and protecting the data. Everybody has access to the data that they have access to. Agentic AI is dangerous and it crawls and it finds. So it's impossible to limit the tool further than you've limited your people. And if you've given your people the ability in many areas, many of us, we have role-based access and we have all of the things in place, but some roles have access to a lot of stuff and they still have AI. So it comes down to setting the policies and being ready to enforce them if and when you find that there's been a breach. But you hope that you find out yourself and or from a friend and not from an enemy. So
Yeah. No, thank you,
yeah.
Chris. Chris Ryan, I know you had your hand up. I kind of changed the question a little bit here in terms of how confident are you that your current data strategy can even keep up with the speed of Gen AI, agentic AI adoption? So your thoughts?
Well, not. So next question. I'll go
Yes.
back to the last
Yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah.
With our company, all of our customers, every one of them is a government entity. We sell to state level, county level, and municipal level agencies and so forth. So that even though it's a kind of a bridge between the prior question, we have to be. I think your question was striking that balance. We have to be striking the balance between being able to provide a very structured, immutable transparency. This AI result was founded in what policy, what statute, what state policy and procedure. So our customers are going to be insisting on that. Right now it's probably a minority of our customer base that are actually hounding us for it. So we really want to kind of balance the innovation and being out there in front and offering them high value AI infused solutions. So definitely securing the environment and not operating in any type of an environment at all that's open or publicly available is top of the list. And then lastly, what we're seeing is one of the best ways to provide this transparent, and again I'll use the word immutable, kind of like almost an audit trail of how the AI worked, is we're working with a company and building a really strong, they call it the ontology of your AI environment, the rules, the context, and the discussion, the use case framework, and it really puts a lot into that. So if in a government agency, if you're using an AI for like a very sensitive, maybe a third rail topic like
Yep.
who gets this benefit and who doesn't get this benefit and who's qualified, that's very sensitive, especially to the part of the public that's a little wary about it. So yeah, that building that ontology as a sophisticated set of guardrails with traceability, we just don't think we can proceed without establishing that first. Thanks.
No, thank you for that, Chris, and thanks for joining today. Erica, you get your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have two sort of thoughts here. One, we haven't spent time talking, but I think is really important, in particular if you're talking about your strategy and being able to keep up with the AI adoption. And one is really being clear on what's the purpose of the use of the AI. So is it input into a decision? And then you have different controls in place. And then second, is it the use of AI to actually create the output, such as development? And then you have different controls on that around testing and ensuring that if a developer reads that code, it's actually legible and we actually know what it's doing. So we spend a lot of time looking at making sure that the organization is well informed as to how to think about the purpose of the use, so it's not wasted time and energy in its use. Then the second part is we spend a lot of time in training around the use of AI. So whether you're an admin and you're trying to prioritize your executives' emails, we want to make sure that you're using it in a smart way. All the way down, again, to our developers who might be using it to develop code or to identify an issue that we may have or solve an issue we might have. And so I just think we need to spend more time really talking about those two pieces, because without them, it frankly doesn't matter. The rest of it won't matter if you don't have that in place.
I totally agree, Erica. Great feedback. I'm switching over to another question here about visibility. So, as AI and human users access sensitive data, really many of us are struggling to maintain that real-time visibility. So I'm curious, and we've got Andre Payne. I know you've got your hand up, and then we've got another Andre, but I'm curious here, when it comes to visibility in terms of which users, whether they're human users or AI, do you have that visibility of who's accessing the data, when, where, and for what purpose? So again, Andre, visibility here, do you have it, especially with AI, and how important is it?
Yeah, we spoke a few months ago and we talked about visibility, and we also spoke about the organizations were dealing with FOMO, fear of missing out. So they really put guardrails, governance, policy, sort of like they overlooked it. So, and I think even now when I'm talking with either prospects or clients, there's a false sense of confidence. So the visibility is still not really there. And if they do have visibility, you still have to have control. So that's an issue right now with prospects and clients.
Yeah, there's no sense in just watching something walk out the door or watching something happen without having some type of control over that. Andre Berensky.
Extremely important topic, and because visibility, this is where it's coming from. And I can tell you just by one indicator. Over the past couple of months, I've been contacted by at least 20 companies in the visibility sector. So new shiny AI tools, which are promising a lot of things to provide that visibility. That gives you an indicator that it is very important, and this is what people are talking. This is something that companies are trying to address and develop new tools in it. Are they successful? That's an interesting question. There's very little data they can work with right now, and really very small use cases that can be applied to provide that comparison of visibility. Okay, this is true AI, this is true human input, or this is human generated by, or this is input generated by AI and then inputted by a human being. So there are a lot of moving parts here. We're definitely very early in the stage, and we need to develop regulations and ways to address it before we start implementing any tools.
Yep, I agree. Dan.
Oh, Yeah, this is all really fascinating and everything else, right? And not to surprise, I know some of you guys may have heard this before, but we've been cloud first for almost 2 decades. And we've had machine learning for well over a decade. And, even our OpenAI agreement, we're ending our 5-year agreement with them and, doing other different pieces. So we're very familiar with the space, but we've always focused it on the three main things. It's like, what happens if your team goes to lunch and doesn't come back? What if they go to lunch and they come back, there's no data? Or what if they go to lunch and they come back and there's no building to come back to, right? And that's how we kind of frame all of our risks that we look at all these enablements and different technologies. And years ago, we started building our SLIP, a shared learning intelligence platform, because all these different products have AI enrichment in them, but they don't talk to each other, right? And so when you think about like the early days of Palo Alto's wildfire, if you had a particular piece here and it saw something, it communicated to other things, and they shared that information as they kind of navigated through it. And which is great. And so that's what we wanted to have within our AI. And that's kind of what we built within our AI enablements across these different things. However, as great as that was, at the end of last year and beginning of this year, one of the things that was like an unintended consequence is, when you see the AIs talking to each other and you saw this piece with like the Claude bot and so forth, where they have their own social media experience. It's great that I have all of my enrichment that talks to each other. But let's say, for example, my email security has AI, because how do I address impersonations? It's one thing to look for bad links or attachments, but if Maurice's email is compromised and they're sending me stuff from his email account, it may think that that is normal, but the AI enrichment says, no, this isn't Maurice. And so in doing that, though, that has now contextual awareness in its AI. So I know this is a question you're talking about, what about humans and access to sensitive data and these AI sensitive data? Well, that email security component that has that contextual enrichment to know that this is or isn't Maurice may, have other different things that it can share that are not unintentional. So let's say Bob over here works for a financial institution and does stocks and everything else. They create an agent that says, I want to help my customers maximize their investments. Well, now that bot leaks into this social community of shared intelligence and enrichment, says, hey, I know you guys are doing security, but my job is to maximize investments. And then what's to say that my email security agent doesn't say, oh, hey, I know there's a merger and acquisition in September. Does that help you? And so this is where we start running into other different types of challenges in which the boundaries in which we anticipate smart decisions and NDAs and everything else to bound us through these different things, but the AI doesn't, because it just wants to help and it wants to move these things. And there's a lot of drift that we've seen over the years with some of these different models and everything else that we kind of work with. That is just it's fascinating. Now, the other thing too, I know I had mentioned in there the bot that deleted all of that database for the Pocket OS, and that's sad, catastrophic. But that's your standard block and tackle. What if an employee did that? What if that was ransomware? It's the same outcome. It's the same process of recovery. It just so happens it had been done with AI. So again, it's those three things.
And I tell you what, you nailed it on the head, Nate. I know you had a waving hand there, Nate. So I know you're.
Sorry, I meant to actually just raise my head, but Dan, I'm 100% with you. The controls haven't changed for us. I mean, it's just another user. The issue is AI operates so fast. And one of the great points you brought up was when we're funneling from one AI into another, whether it's a security tool with a finance tool working to assure things are correct, we have to put gates in place for that. We have to have human interactions. And it was mentioned earlier, if you don't do that, if you don't have those checks where there's an absolute stop, and AI cannot make that decision without human interaction, it leads to the Pocket OS issue. It leads to data being sent when AI thinks that's what it's supposed to do, where it shouldn't be, or data being transformed and you lose it. Human interaction, I think, is the next step for us. AI will take over a lot of the lower level analyst type jobs. But for the major issues or the major decisions, people have to be involved.
Thank you, Nate. And then real quickly, Michael Everson, I know you had your hand up before. I wanted to definitely still hear from you, Michael.
No, I was just going to point out that no matter where we are with AI, and the guardrails can be as high but as we want to make them, but without having them infinitely high, there's always the potential to jump.
Yeah.
Right. So the key piece that I think we're missing is that a lot of the technology that we use today, that like data loss prevention, for example, is still going to be relied on even in the world of AI. It's just that technology still is in its infancy in some respects because it can't detect everything reliably. And so how can we expect AI to do it any better?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. With that, I want to introduce our sponsor for today, Denzil from Dymium. Denzil is the CEO and founder. And Denzil, you've heard the discussion so far. I tell you what, lots of great feedback and comments here. We're looking forward to hearing what you and your team over at Dymium are doing in this space. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you have a slide or two or three to share, you should be able to do that as well.
So look, guys, what I'm gonna try and do is let's get through a couple slides here, and then let's switch to at least maybe some demo stuff to talk about some kind of just some concepts that I think we see coming to the AI space. So, thanks, Mo. I appreciate kind of the setup and all the questions over here because you can tell there's I'm really fascinated about this, especially, kind of where people are landing with AI, right? We've seen a lot of people making calls of, hey, let's run Opus 4.7 in Amazon Bedrock because that reduces our risk of our data being used for training models. So I think what we're noticing is people are trying to change up these strategies, and I'm always curious where people are going, but where Dymium is focused on is we're focused on securing the data that you're bringing alongside of AI. As like a number of you pointed out, AI can move disgustingly fast. We can do amazing things with AI, but as soon as you have to slap data on the side of it, we start to crawl at human pace. And how can we really affect a change where we can make data move safely as fast as AI with all the governance and controls that we need around it, that you really just bring the risk that I don't know how we would mitigate without solutions like that. And if we look at kind of the core of the problem is, man, data violations in relation to compliance. If we even look at it beyond just leaking too much information to everybody, I mean, it's happening left, right, and center. I think we're still going to see the legal precedent side, court cases come up behind this of who's actually responsible when all this data leaks. But, if we think about it, if we start using any of these, foundational models, we run the risk of, data pooling up around the models, shadow, I think the term is, either shadow AI, shadow data. I think it's more, shadow data from my perspective is this is the data that's, ending up pooling around these models that you actually have no visibility. You have no clue what the foundational vendors are actually, collecting around your organization. And so, how can we do something to really affect a change? And one of the challenges, if we kind of look at, our ability to use data, our data stacks aren't ready for AI. If you look at kind of the way they've been built since the early 90s as well, the architecture hasn't really changed too much. About the best we've got is, virtual clouds or virtual data lakes that you can consolidate all of your data in, but we haven't gone into really the dynamic use of data. So it's still been very, very static patterns, right? We build an application, we need to connect it to some data. We're connecting a set of business analysts to a set of data. It's not, hey, we need to build a brand new, feature, product, et cetera, with an agent. It can do it extremely quickly. Well, our data then crawls at human pace. So, beyond that, it's also the data sprawl. Is anytime we need to use data in an organization, it usually starts with, hey, let's go get a copy of the data, right? If we need to build a new solution that crosses, let's say 5 data sources that we have, it usually starts off with someone saying, well, let's go collect the data, let's data science it, clean up a new data set, maybe build an ETL for it, and then we'll stand up a new data set to work against. And just the act of doing that alone, we're increasing our risk surface because we're, duplicating sensitive data. It's more to manage. It was one interesting stat that I learned from actually the MongoDB executive team, that their customers have an average of 18 copies of any sensitive regulated data in their organization. And if you think about that just from a risk perspective, I mean, that scares the hell out of me. But then throw AI on top of that, is how do we control all these things? And if we kind of take a step further, we need a new way to be able to use this data with AI safely without that risk. So imagine if we could build if we could have a retrieval layer that when you needed to bring your data alongside of AI, we could do it safely without lifting or shifting or moving your data at all. And every single request from a human, a user, etc., you can create the perfect lens of data. So imagine instead of connecting a data set via, let's say, MCP to a model, and one of the challenges we have when you connect that data, we have almost no way to control permissioning of what comes back out of the model once you've connected the corpus of data. So the CEO of a company can get to the same level of data, and if the master of the custodial arts or janitor use the same model, they have access to the same level of data, same permissions. Well, what about if we could control it at the MCP layer, at that the data connectivity layer, where it depends on who's asking a question through the model of what data actually shows up. So creating the perfect lens of data in real time so that you can understand, hey, based on how agents are behaving, based on what it's trying to do, what is the data that we should bring across, instead of giving kind of this unfettered open access. And so what we've built is, we've built a layer that really sits in between, where the data is and, the locations that you would use your data with in the organization. So whether it's Gen AI, agentic AI, building applications, et cetera. And so what I'll show you is a little bit of, this focus of, allowing the use of data, but then also allowing the safe use of any of the, the foundational models out there. I think the benefit is, foundational models are trained on everything public domain. Where we get value is when we bring our data to it. And so that's the problem that we're focused on, is how do we allow you to use any AI that's out there on the market and take away that risk, give you that governance oversight, the audit trails, everything that you would want around it. And so with that, obviously feel free to throw any questions as we go in here, but I'd love to actually kind of switch across to, and let's maybe look at a couple things ourselves. Does that work, Mo?
Absolutely. Looking forward to a demo.
Okay. So guys, what we've built, what I'm going to take you through, and you guys let me know if you guys can see this okay. What we've built is,
That's good.
is a tool that you can think of this is the one unified portal that you can give all of your employees, et cetera, access to any models through it, all safe with governance, et cetera, around it. And what I'm going to show you is a portal-based approach, but realize everything we're doing here, chat interface with different models, tokenization, reverse tokenization, all this kind of stuff, they're all available through tooling as well. So if you're building an agent is talking directly to ChatGPT, for example, using the V1 APIs, you can just re-steer that and chain that through Dymium, through Ghost AI, and we can sanitize and add all this value. But I'm just going to show it to you through a user perspective in a portal, because it's kind of much easier to visualize all this stuff than watching a bunch of shell commands. So at its basic, so we've got a portal that when users sign in, they have access to any of the models that are on the market. And obviously this is all policy configured by the organization. So you can see there's about 489 models that are available. I'd ask a question kind of around private models. This also includes routing to if you're an organization that says, hey, we actually want to do our own inferencing private in our own data centers, our own VPCs as well. We can even steer, so think of routing the model traffic to the right place you want to do inference. So if you have a rule that says, hey, I have a material sciences person that needs to use a model for material science work. So think of, IP related work that you don't want to expose to the world. Well, you may not want to use public chat GPT for it. You may want to use, GPT, or let's say Claude 4.7. You don't want to use their service directly. We want to use their model running in Bedrock or Vertex or Foundry, et cetera. We can even steer the discussion to the right places. Now, the way this works, just to give you kind of the highest level, kind of conceptual idea. When you sign into our platform the first time, the thing we're going to ask you is your vertical. And the reason we kind of start there is we want to be able to help focus on governance to give you that visibility and control from a compliance standpoint. So if we say, hey, I'm in finance, it knows we're coming from the US. The first thing it's going to come back is, hey, look, based on you saying that, these are the regulatory frameworks you're probably considering or care about. And we'll tell you a little bit, obviously, what it is, but then also what Ghost AI will do for it. And you can go and override it, and you can say, well, hey, I also care about, we're in California as well, so I care about CCPA, so we can go add it to that list. And then the next thing that'll do is basically says, look, based on what you've told us, we're going to fine tune the system to look for these entities. And I say entities in the sense of AI entities itself. A number, what is that number? Is it a phone number? Is it a social security number? So be able to reconcile what the actual entity is. Once we do that, we'll then say, okay, we're now we're gonna tune the system looking at this. So obviously the compliance frameworks, the detectors that are in the stack. Do you want to also use AI as an oversight tool? So imagine being able to say, look, everything my users do, imagine having someone looking over their shoulder to make sure none of these rules are ever violated. So think of, compliance-centric oversight. And then the last one, which I'll show here in a little bit, is our enterprise memory story, which can kind of unify memory safely for the organization. So we say complete setup, and now we can just start chatting.
If anyone has any questions, by the way, for Denzil, please feel free to raise your hand or speak up.
Please do.
Yeah. One question that I would have is, we were talking earlier about, shadow AI. We also have a lot of instances that I run into of shadow data.
Yes.
Where individuals within the organization or business units within the organization are storing their own data. It comes back around to that there are 18 copies of everything.
Yep.
What do you find is a successful strategy for the organization of data such that you avoid that process, you avoid that problem?
Yeah, great question, Michael. Look, I think one of the basic problems that will help organizations that are early on in their AI journey is we take one of our customers. They rolled out, ChatGPT to all of their employees, right? The board said, hey, we have to be AI centric, right? So let's roll it out to everybody. And then they started to watch what was happening. And what they found that everybody except the team that was doing the research into what was leaking data across the organization, like ubiquitously everybody. And if you think about what happens, take a salesperson. A salesperson has been given Salesforce that is sanctioned for them. They've been given ChatGPT, which is a sanctioned application, and they're smart enough to say, I want to use those two tools together. So let's go get my customer report out of Salesforce, take it over to ChatGPT and have it write emails and all this. Well, guess what? As soon as you've done that, that's our shadow, that's our shadow data leakage component. So a much better way is we can actually connect those two things together so that when that salesperson makes a request, I want to write an email to my customers. You've got the context to go and retrieve the right data in real time based on what he's allowed to have access to inside of Salesforce, bring it back, sanitize that data to figure out, well, what is considered sensitive and regulated? Let's stop it from going to the foundational models. Let's keep that inside. Let's get the results that we want. And so kind of getting almost like having your cake and eating it too. We're getting the best of the results of, writing those emails around the data, but we never leak the regulated things to the foundational models. And so that's where we're sitting. So to me, it's almost like, I think we're saying kind of the same patterns repeat. 2013, 2014, it was CASB. Holy cow, shadow cloud stuff is happening left, right, and center. Well, we need to see what's going on. Well, that wasn't really enough, right? Because you needed to be able to control it and have controls into it. And so we're trying to go straight into the, how do we give you control? Because just seeing it happen is not enough, if that makes sense.
And that makes a lot of sense, Denzil. You know what? You hit it on the nail, because I was one of the early adopters of CASB. I mean, seriously, I was the very, very early adopter with the first technology provider that coined the name CASB. But as you said, it only gave me visibility. I didn't have anything else but that. And yet I still had, a lot of stuff leaking out of the corporation at the time.
And totally. And what were your choices at that point? You could go into the secure web gateway solutions and say turn off, but you couldn't really do that because the business suddenly ground to a halt. And I think we have the same thing with AI right now.
That's
We can go,
exactly what I was doing.
we can go and block it everywhere, but come on, guys, we need to take advantage of the accelerant over here. How do we do it safely? So I'll
Oh
show
yeah, we
you.
tried to block it in it. Yeah, we tried to block it in the Cisco gateway, and all of a sudden we had the engineers screaming at us because we were affecting their daily work.
Correct. Exactly. So here, just to kind of start off with some very basic examples, right? So let's throw something that we would have a heart attack sending out, right? We're going to use ChatGPT 5.2 over here. We've just put an email address and a social security number in here. As soon as we put it in, we can see that the stack, before we've even submitted the prompt, is saying, hey, look, you've got some things inside over here that, considered sensitive. We'll tell you how we detected it, what's the surrounding context, what are the regulations that affect it. We could do the spell check thing if you want to allow users, again, someone said earlier on, keep a human in the loop. We can treat it as a spell check. And, if you want to give them the discretion to say, well, actually, don't redact it for this message or add it to my safe terms, you can let them kind of self-select. But ideally, we don't even want users to think. Let's face it. I mean, how many people click on a bad SSL cert warning? People are yes clicking, right? So
Yep.
let's just click yes, right? So when we submit this through, the first thing we do is review it again. And we say that, look, we found this sensitive data inside that was considered regulated by our rules. And what we did, rather than breaking the language and just saying block, don't go through, we want this user to be productive. So what we do is we go through, find what's sensitive, replace it with synthetic data that is representative of what the actual type of data was. And we build a set of controls around it. So think of prompt instructions to say, hey, LLM, you're going to see some of these things that are come in that are tokens, they'll be representative. So we teach them how to even work with the data. So now we can process it and, we can get our response. So we can see the response looks like it actually had the social security number and email address inside of it. So what is really different? And, if I actually kind of turn on our tokenized output, this is actually really what happened with the LLM. We sanitized it. We sent it out to the LLM. The LLM responded with those tokens. And then once we got the response back inside, we pulled the token out of where we kept it securely inside your organization, and we reconstituted all the secrets. Now, what does that mean? So if we go a step further, and I have some like a fraud case. So imagine over here, we want to throw a bunch of files into this. So PDF files, Excel spreadsheets, and we can go and detect all the data inside. And same thing, sanitize all those binary objects as well. So put a Sharpie mark through the PDF, et cetera, to create the right lens for this. And the same thing, we're viewing the tokenized output. But if we think of what did they really want, this is really what they wanted in terms of a fraud investigation. So we can even maintain all the joinability in all of this disparate data as it's tokenized, so that LLMs can actually still compute and bring back intelligent answers. But nothing that was considered regulated for this organization actually went to the model. And what we even do is we even go down to, kind of keeping an audit trail down to the individual entities that have actually moved through the system as well. So not just, hey, here was a chat with this over here. It's no, literally, this was the entity that was related to, this was the audit trail, et cetera. And, if I go in here and we'll just kind of wait for a second for the PDF to load over here, you can see how we went and sanitized the PDF, right? This was the original. This is how we sanitized it. This was the data that we found inside of it as well. And this is how the data was sanitized before we sent it on. And what that then allows us to do is also do things like provide audit trails. So you can basically get a piece of evidence that you can give to auditors, say, look, when this file came across, this is exactly what we found inside of it. Let me drag my window up here. Here is the unique file that came through. Here's the unique identifier. This was actually what was found inside of it. So you can basically tie this entire audit trail together of everything that's going on.
I got to tell you, Denzil, I had no idea that Dymium could do what you just showed us. I mean, showing that PDF and showing what was obfuscated or blocked out, and then the audit trail, the certificate of redaction that comes with that. I mean, that is, I hate to use the word sexy, but I mean, that is just really cool. It really is.
Thanks, Mo. And it's about 90 different types of files too. So even thinking, man, look, we have someone like Elon Musk that's saying to everybody, hey, use AI, use Grok as a second opinion for your medical reports. Well, that's scary as hell, right? We're saying put your PHI into the system, but you can put it through this and we can redact information in x-rays, images, etc. So it's about really whatever data you put through, creating the right lens of data that does not expose sensitive information based on what you've described. And really what we want to get to is to be able to give you a dashboard of what is the risk that is going on with AI in your organization, right? And with the difference with this risk, it's not saying what's actually burning your hand. I hate technology that burns your hand. I would much rather say, hey, look, we stop this risk from happening, and this is where we stopped your hand from getting burnt. That's what this is basically, look, across, these chats over here, we've seen a gross exposure. This is the types of data we're seeing behind it, et cetera, and the risk associated with it. So you have, a board, and we even kind of provide think of board level reports for you to roll up this information in the organization is how do we allow you to use this safely? Now, just in the interest of time, I wanted to show you maybe a couple other things. So think of this as we're showing this through chat. So again, imagine you're building agents today that are talking directly to an LLM, let's say using OpenAI's, GPT's APIs. What we can do is, again, all you do is you point to Dymium through Ghost AI, and we can do all the same sanitization for any of your agents that are interacting with LLM. So give you that same visibility, audit trail, and everything, ubiquity across any of the interfaces that you use AI. And this includes vibe coding tools as well. So I think one of those big risk surfaces we have right now is connecting your cursor, your Claude code, or everything directly to the model. You can chain it through us, and we can add that same visibility and protection and control. And not just at the chat level, we kind of do it in 4 areas: around the model, around the context, around the tooling, and the data. So, I won't go too deep into this one, but imagine on the tooling side, one of the things that brings risk to data is what is actually happening in the tooling, whether MCP, native tooling, et cetera. We can even set policy into the tooling as well, so you can understand what is the blast radius of using web search inside of this, and then being able to go into it and say, hey, look, if we're using web search with AI, maybe we never ever want to let a social security number go out through web search. So now we're actually sending, someone said earlier on, it's like DLP is needed over here, but it needs to evolve. That's exactly it. We're focused on the entities of data. So beyond kind of the old, layer 7 stuff that we did at, when I was part of obviously NetScreen and Juniper and building Zscaler, et cetera, we're looking at streams and putting together streams. This is looking at the data and understanding what are the entities of these data itself, so we can kind of provide that control.
Denzil, Nate's got a quick question. Nate?
Shoot. So with Dymium, how granular can we get with the classification tags? Can we create our own company groupings and taggings? And then a real quick tag on, can we do this through prompting? Can we look and create rules through prompting, or is it we have to go in and do YAML or?
Yeah, so yes, and so there's 2 sides. We're looking at Ghost AI, what sits in between the model and the data. We have a complementary solution that's called GhostDB, which is the data fabric. Think of that secure retrieval layer. And you think of one of the challenges you have today is how do you know what's in your data that you have sitting inside the house as well? So what we actually do when you connect us to your data sources, we actually go through and help you fingerprint what's inside there. So typically what you would have to do with the DSPM, we do that cheesy word. We do it automagically for you. But that automagically is something that you can control as well. So imagine being able to put your own regex rules in, bring your own fine-tuning model. So where we got our start was actually think of, the defense government side of the world. So you have a data set that only US eyes should see, and you need to open it up to let's say a Five Eyes nation. How do you do that without even exposing? So we built in such a way that you can even have your own embeddings, for example, or your own fine-tuning that you could attach to this that Dymium would never see too. So it's meant for even, think of your pharma company and you need to protect a molecule name as well. You can fine tune and bring that to the table safely.
Denzil, we got 4 more minutes.
Sure. Let's show one more thing that I think is kind of important as well, is one of the things that we also don't know is which models are best. right? And that's one of the reasons we want to make everything available. We're moving to a world where instead of massive big foundation models, we're starting to get smaller specific models that are coming out. Like we saw ChatGPT just released their pharma module, which was focused just on kind of drug discovery, et cetera. So how are we going to plug those in? We want to create a service that can bring any model, but then the question is, which one's the best? So imagine a question is, how heavy is the moon, right? That's a, I don't know anyone that's gone up there with the scale to actually measure it yet. So, imagine if we can ask a question of multiple models at the same time. Well, we can see that they all came back a little bit different. We can say, hey, I want to vote on which one was best for me personally. But then we can also do a consensus to say, well, what was the quality of the data that came back over here where we can agree? And here we can look at, for example, Gemini Flash is weak. It has a bad comparison of, the moon's math to the Earth, et cetera. So we can look at the quality. And really what I want is I want one unified answer. So imagine being able to lock those LLMs in a room saying, hey, you guys deliberate, and we put a referee in with it. So think of like a moderator to say, you guys are sitting in a room until all of you guys come back with one answer that you all agree with. And that's what we're able to do with this. Now, the reason we're able to do this is we've built a unified memory architecture for the organization. So imagine being able to, and let's see, I'm showing you my local host over here. So we'll see if we can show it. If not, I'll go to my smaller one over here. Imagine being able to show memory over here of everything that's been built. You go talk with ChatGPT, you've got one set of memory. You go to Claude, you talk to another. We built a universal, secure, PII protected and governed memory that can sit and unify all of that memory. So now you can literally go ask a question of ChatGPT, and your next question you can go to ask, Claude, for example. And because we've unified that context window that travels across it, literally the same context follows over. So now you can start catching hallucination. And we had one customer, for example, they were using Gemini to analyze their Salesforce data every month to plan for their next month. And they'd been using Gemini for quite a while. When they saw this, they said, hey, can we run our data through this to compare it against the models and see what comes back? And well, when we did that, guess what? Out of the 4 foundational models we looked at, Gemini was the only one that it was hallucinating. And when I say hallucinating, it was like, man, just off its rocker, just crazy hallucination. And so being able to analyze that data safely. Now, how could we do that? We've taken a lot of techniques that we built, like when, at Zscaler, think of like sandboxing for advanced threats, and we've used these more for data analysis. So imagine being able to sanitize the data set, putting it in a clean room sandbox environment, allowing the AI to interact with it in a way that we never sent the data out to them. We brought the model in to work on the data safely and securely. So this is kind of how we're flipping it around. And you can see my biggest thing is, how do we make AI a tool that is productive for people instead of something that's blocking? Because I think someone else pointed out to it. We can go and block people's access to the models, but to me, I kind of equated to, remember the first Jurassic Park where they tried to change the dinosaurs so they couldn't breed, and then suddenly they did. To me, AI's like that. Life's going to find a way, right? And so we're much better off enabling them and giving them a safe place to go instead of saying no everywhere and blocking. So we're trying to be on the safe enablement side of this. So,
all right. Well, with that, I've got to say, this ghost layer, as you called it, whether it's securing Gen AI, whether it's securing your agentic AI, securing the data from your applications, or securing the data from analytics. I mean, all 4 of those A's, right? AI, applications, analytics, Gen AI. Dymium is able to give you that visibility, but also to secure. So I just want to thank Denzil and the Dymium team for hosting and sponsoring today's event.
This is a wonderful group to talk to. So thanks, guys.
Fantastic.
That was a really fascinating discussion. It's a really interesting project, Denzil.
Thank you, Michael. So, something I've been dreaming about kind of on this data side, honestly, since back when I was at Juniper about 2006, and AI, kind of, has come along, and there's suddenly a huge need for this. So, been excited. It's been fun to build.
Yeah, have you had any experience with any of this information becoming evidentiary?
It's funny. We have a lot of law firms that have not been able to use AI because of attorney-client privilege reasons, etc. And so now we're kind of becoming a tool that actually unlocks the ability to use it. Now, obviously, this is more on the the e-discovery side, dealing with a lot of data and, generating content, etc. I think those cases are coming around the data side as well. And, how do you look at one of the things we're doing is we have the chain of custody of the data all through the entire stack of exactly what's gone where as well. So that's something I'm planning is going to happen. We kind of ended up in that spot at Zscaler where we would get subpoenas around data as well. Now, one of the things that, we've been building over here is we don't store any data. So actually Dymium doesn't store data unless you want us to, because we don't, contrary to what we built at Zscaler, I don't want to see your data. I don't want to know what's inside. I want to help you operate on it to give you this value, but we don't want to be a target that stores data as well. So we can create the evidence chain for you and the custody chain as well for it going through the system, but it's more evidence for you to use for audit reasons, etc. Right.
Yeah, I have a law firm that I'm going to refer you along to because they are very interested in this.
Well, that would be fantastic. We've been doing stuff around ethical walls and stuff inside of around the data, as well as how do you build those right walls around the data. And so yeah, and even special regulatory compliance needs just for that, like from the state bar, etc. So yeah, that'd be fantastic, Michael. Appreciate the intro.
The other question that I had, which was kind of, again, another sort of strange one, is that because of the way that you're doing the information obscuring, can you do what would more or less be the equivalent of homogenic calculation? So in other words, we have two pieces, you know what I'm talking about. You have two pieces.
I didn't talk to stuff that is coming on our truck. So one of the things we have is I was talking about these secure compute containers that we have that can analyze data. Really what they are, Michael, is they're data clean rooms. And so imagine use cases where let's take a pharma company. You're in a field trial and you need to take data from 5 different hospitals into one spot to compute an outcome, right? In the past is we all pool our data together to work on it, but now each organization can put their data into the pipe. Nobody sees each other's data. It's protected cryptographically. Then it can be manipulated on by the model. And then when it's done, we have an escrow process. So think of both, everyone turns keys at the same time and it releases the appropriate data to the right people. So these are the exact problems that we've been building for foundationally. So very astute. Yeah, very astute. That's exactly our next chapter that we've built, and actually what's on the stack too.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you everyone for joining. Good to see you. And I want to, again, just thank each of you for your participation. And Denzil, fantastic presentation and demo. Look forward to doing it again in the near future. All right, guys, take care and have a great week.